The whole story started about 10 years ago, a ton of sweat equity. I bought my first investment property, a 1930s cottage, to turn into a boutique Airbnb. But wait, let's go back to where this started. It's been quite a ride getting to where we are right now, but I thought that this week's video I could make a little bit different and talk about some things that I've been wanting to talk about for a little while, and also my ability to work on things that I wanted to work on this week has just been ground to a halt, which is fine.
It was cold and dark.
Like many of you, I have been stuck without electricity due to Ice Storm Fern. We do thankfully have power back right now. There's a lot of people that still don't have power, so I do feel very fortunate in that regard, and I thought I would just take this opportunity to talk a little bit about house hunting, about building equity, about my thoughts on purchasing your first home. I'm currently renovating a 1930s cottage that I purchased. Just a quick recap if you haven't been following along so far, I've painted the kitchen, refinished some of the existing cabinets, and changed the layout of the kitchen, shifting the oven over, moving the refrigerator into an adjacent room, installed new cabinets and countertops, added wallpaper and decor, and so far outside the kitchen, we've created a new bedroom by dividing the laundry room in half, color drenching the space. We've added a bunk bed, storage, heating, and decor. It's part of a whole bigger plan, and it started about 10 years ago whenever we purchased our first home, which was a complete and total fixer. All this time where I could not work on projects really gave me a lot of space to think about goals, about why I'm so anxious to start looking for another property, and it hit me that a lot of what I've learned along the way might actually be helpful to you. Where this all started is just as important as where I'm going. I was scared to buy my first house. We bought it before COVID, before Fixer Upper, before the real estate market turned into what it is now. We did take a couple years to do all the work ourselves, and in doing that, we built a lot of sweat equity. We also learned a lot of things the hard way.
The greatest teacher failure is.
But that house was really a stepping stone that got us to where we are now. We bought this farm, and we were able to use this equity to buy the cottage that we're currently working on now. So it's been a whole process. I was never given anything, and neither was my husband. I don't ever want to discourage anybody, and I feel like a lot of people nowadays feel like it is almost impossible to purchase your first home, but I feel like a lot of people really look at it the wrong way, and there's just like everything else, there's a ton of bad advice online. So I thought that I would just come on here this week in the midst of this ice storm and talk a little bit about what I look for when looking for a home, tips on if you're looking for your first home. When you talk about house hunting, a lot of people, I think, really have this misconception that the first house you buy is going to be perfect and it's going to have everything that you want, and it's going to be completely move-in ready and not have any issues. And if that were the case, we would never have had a home. We would never have had our first home. We would not have this home. Our first home had a ton of issues. The kitchen had some serious problems, not just aesthetically, but also structurally. There were some HVAC vents that came up under the kitchen cabinets, which had over the years caused some condensation problems. We had to remove not only the subfloor, but some of the floor joists to make those repairs. And then after we bought our first house, started looking for people to help us do some work, and we realized really quickly that was very, very hard to find somebody that would even show up. So that's kind of how that process started. But even when we looked for that first house, I was looking for something that had enough square footage, because when you're talking about renovating a house, especially if you're inside the city limits somewhere, you're going to run into a lot more complications if you're adding on square footage. A lot of zoning and inspection requirements really specify in a lot of cities any changes to exterior walls and structures, and it's going to make things a lot more complicated to do things yourself if you want to enclose an outdoor space, if you want to do any kind of additions. So you want to make sure that if you're going to try to do renovations yourself, you find something that has enough square footage that you are happy with. Even if it's not the right layout, you can always make changes. And then location. Location is something that I feel like can kind of be a gray area though, because I think a lot of people have this ideal location that they would like to be in. But there's a lot of houses for sale that get overlooked because on paper they might not look like they're in the perfect area. But I do encourage you, even if you live in an area where you're super familiar.
You think you know, but you don't.
I've lived here my entire life, with the exception of a few years when I moved out of the country, but I know this town like the back of my hand. But I'm still surprised by houses I find for sale that are tucked away on dead-end streets and cul-de-sacs and just little areas that you've never really been around and never been to, and you don't realize there's nice areas tucked in. So if you're looking for a house and you see something that's in your budget, I would encourage you to just go look at it. I mean, I think that the first step to looking for a house is to start looking at houses. Find a realtor that's very, very patient with you, somebody that's not lazy, that doesn't mind taking you to look at some stuff. I don't want you to waste people's time. I'm not a realtor. I'm not trying to give, official advice here. I'm not a financial advisor, but if you go look at houses, it will help you see a little bit more of what's out there, what's available, and what's realistic in your budget, and it will help you understand those areas. There's a lot of houses that have been on the market for over 6 months, and especially if you see something that's been on the market for over a year, there are red flags when it comes to houses that have stayed on the market for a long time. But you've got to remember that there's a lot of people who don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to do any kind of work, and they don't want to put in any kind of effort if the house isn't just perfect. And you would be surprised at houses that are not really have a ton of problems. It can sometimes be very difficult to find the right buyer. I would not discount those houses, even if they're out of your budget. If a house has been on the market for more than a year, I would definitely encourage you, if you feel like it's something that you are interested in, to try to make an aggressive offer and not be embarrassed or scared to do that. If something's been on the market for a long time, sometimes they don't drop the price just out of pure ignorance. They just want to try. And sometimes people can't resist, that offer. That's where things come in, though. If you have a relationship with a local bank or with somebody at your financial institution that is familiar with your background, that is able and willing to back you up, then a lot of times you can make offers that are a little bit non-traditional. You can't do this if you're going to get any kind of federally backed, like a FHA, USDA loan. But if you're going to go directly through a bank, there are a lot of benefits, and you can offer some things like a shorter escrow time, so you can close faster. You can negotiate things out of your offer, such as inspections, and I don't encourage you to not get an inspection, but sometimes what they call an inspection in the real estate world is, from what I have experienced, a super unimpressive process. And for some reason, sellers really like the idea of no inspection. Now, somebody needs to inspect that house, whether it's you, a licensed contractor. I want to be very clear before I go any further. I'm not recommending that you never get a home inspection. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that I've just seen them miss a lot of important things, and I'm definitely not recommending that you make any stupid choices. I'm only recommending that you get creative. That kind of leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, is the fact that purchasing a home is very intimidating for people because a lot of people are very scared of maintenance. Now, if you're in an apartment, if you are renting, then just take a moment to think about something with me. So if you're renting an apartment, you've probably had maintenance issues, I'm assuming. Things that are not dealt with right away. And I would say 99% of the time, there's no long-term consequence to the fact that those issues don't get resolved immediately. Now, would it be better for you as a renter Yes, but if you own a home and you have something happen and you cannot deal with it immediately, you need to know what to do to keep things from getting worse, especially when it comes to water. Water's your number one enemy. But otherwise, if you have issues maintenance wise that need to be handled, it's okay if you don't handle them immediately. It's not the end of the world. The sky isn't going to fall. Most things happen over time and will worsen over a span of years and years. So just because you're intimidated by maintenance in general should not stop you from purchasing a home. I also want to talk a little bit about renting, and this might be a sore subject for people, but if you are renting an apartment and it has everything that you want in your dream home, then I kind of would like to encourage you to, I guess, take a step back and think about the money that you're wasting. So I can put this in our own perspective. Like, I know this from firsthand. So we rented a house for a while that was in a really great neighborhood. It had some things that needed done, but it was a really, really big house. It had a really nice kitchen, tons of square footage, and I really, really liked the house. But at the end of the day, we decided that we were throwing away money by renting this house. We did talk to the owners a little bit about purchasing the house, and they had unrealistic expectations about the sales price, and it was so far out of reality that we knew we needed to move on. So I ended up finding a cabin to rent in a extremely rural area. It was very inconvenient. We called it the funny farm. We had flying squirrels in the attic. It was not meant to be lived in all the time, and it definitely could have been worse, but it was pretty sketchy. Not something that I would ever want to live in full time. But we rented that cabin for 12 months, and in that 12-month period we were debt free and we saved $10,000, which we used to purchase our first home. And I think back to that time a whole lot. I tell my kids that, we lived there and were able to make that happen by being uncomfortable. And then when we purchased our first home, it had a lot of issues that we wanted to improve, a lot of things that we wanted to make better, and we were able to do that over time. The house wasn't 100% perfect when we ended up selling it, but it was a huge improvement, and everything that we had done, we not only learned tons of skills from doing, but we built so much equity that we were able to purchase this house and then in turn purchase the cottage, which is an investment and is part of a whole bigger plan. So buying a house is super, super important. It is worthwhile. It's worth being uncomfortable for. It's not always glamorous. I've had a lot of moments where we've been in the middle of renovating things, especially because we've lived in the midst of all these projects for the most part. And you have moments where everything is dusty and dirty, and you get done working at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and there's no escaping it. There's dirt everywhere, and it can get a little heavy, I guess. Like, you think you're not going to get out of this, but you definitely can, and it's definitely worth it. Again, we've not had the money to be able to just pay somebody to do these things, so we've had to do it all ourselves, and I've figured out that we can figure out just about anything. There's very few things that we don't know how to do, and learning how to do things has also made it easier for us to ask for help, which is strange. But like right now, and I'll get to that in next week's video, we're kind of in the midst of some sewage issues at the cottage, and because of all the things that we have learned how to do, it's easier for us to call somebody and kind of ask for advice. I don't know how to word this. Like, what we've been able to do is make some phone calls to people that would otherwise be too busy to come out and fix this problem for us, but say, look, we know X, Y, and Z. Like, we understand how this is supposed to work and something's not working. So can you help us come up with some ideas? And it's crazy how that can really elicit a better response than just asking somebody to come fix something for you. Like, to be able to say, look, I know you don't have time to fix this, but do you have 15 minutes to give me a call and tell me what you think might be wrong? And you would be surprised, like, people really don't care to help. And if somebody does help you in that way, you need to be very, very thankful, because plumbers, electricians, HVAC guys, they have a huge demand, and their time is very, very valuable. Their knowledge is very valuable. So I would encourage you to try to pay them in some way. But yeah, if you're not just like completely ignorant and helpless, you'd be surprised how much better response you get from people. I don't think of buying a property that needs a lot of work as just something that you do to get things cheaper. It's a way to build equity. It's a way to access home ownership, which for a lot of people, I think nowadays they really feel like it's something that's impossible to achieve. But these videos are supposed to be always a way to let you know the realities of not only what it's like renovating a property, but also what it means to renovate and build equity, and the possibilities that can come from doing things yourself. And learning how to do things can really open a lot of opportunities. You don't have to want to do this for a living. You don't have to want to renovate houses over and over. But especially if you're living in an apartment, if you're dreaming of buying your first home, if you're dreaming of buying a project, this can all apply to you, and it can definitely be very, very helpful. The cottage is definitely part of a bigger plan, and there's tons of renovation updates coming. So I hope you'll choose to follow along, and I appreciate it if you've stuck around this far. Thanks for watching, and if you're not done, I'll link some videos that you might enjoy. See you next week. Bye, guys.